Hello, it's Professor Lieu here to do another live Q&A session on art school portfolios, because those of you guys who are interested in applying to art school this year probably know that it is definitely high season for all of that. I'm here to answer all of your questions. You guys can feel free to pick my brain, different tips, whatever you guys want to discuss. So until some of you guys get onto the stream, I want to give all of you some basic tips, because what I do see very often in art school portfolios is common patterns, things that I see across the board in all portfolios, because every portfolio is totally unique and different from everybody else's, but they're all very common themes that I see. For example, one thing that is very common is lack of backgrounds. I feel like in a lot of portfolios, people tend to have a habit of focusing too much on their subject. So if you're doing a drawing of a person, a lot of people will invest all their time and energy into doing a really good job of rendering the portrait, but then they don't realize that actually putting the figure in a place, in an environment, can be hugely important in terms of delivering your message, in terms of creating a more effective piece. And so I think it's really good when you look at your pieces you're putting into your portfolio that you treat them very holistically, that you don't say to yourself, okay, the only thing that matters is the face in this image. You have to say to yourself, how does that background really impact that figure? Because in theory, if you have a good background, it should make your piece a lot better. For those of you guys who just joined us, this is a live Q&A on art school portfolios. Please jump into the chat box, ask me anything you guys want. I will try to keep up, point you guys to all types of free resources that we have on artprof.org. We also have this opportunity if you guys would like to purchase a portfolio critique. We do review portfolios for BFA and MFA programs, and it's a 30-minute audio critique. You guys can choose any one of our staff, teaching artists, myself, Eloise, Lauren, Alex, Jordan, Deepti, Kat. Take a look at that, because there's all different types of options. And what's cool is you guys will find that everybody on our staff has a totally different set of skills and different areas of expertise. So if you guys really want to know about filmmaking, you might want to request a critique from Eloise, because Eloise specializes in filmmaking and probably has way more to say about that than, say, me. I specialize more in drawing, painting, printmaking, sculpture, anatomy. That tends to be my focus, although I do have experience working, because I've been teaching for so long, in so many different areas. Cross DeLuca, this channel is amazing, has great advice. I wish there were more videos for pro artists or artists that aren't or haven't gone to school. We're working on it, Cross DeLuca. I think one of the limitations we have is that we don't have a very big budget. In fact, we barely have any budget. It's shoestring. And so we're trying really hard to put out as much content as we can out there. But I mean, I'm a one-woman video production house. If I could hire 8 editors to do all that for me, sheesh, if I could have it my way, I'd produce a tutorial every single week. But Cross DeLuca, if you have particular subjects that you would like to see us make a tutorial on, I am always adding to our to-do list. So please let me know. And I don't know if you've seen everything that we produce, but we do try to produce a wide range of topics and also levels. So if you go to the playlist on our YouTube channel, you will see we have playlists for beginning tutorials, intermediate tutorials, advanced tutorials. So take a look, because I think sometimes, because we do have so much content, it can be very hard for people to find exactly what it is they're looking for. We're always working on that. It's an ongoing challenge. But yeah, if you guys want to know, oh, well, what's a good course to learn about color or about lighting? I mean, I wouldn't say that the videos are just for pro artists. I think that in an ideal world, I would hope that everybody could learn something from every video. I know, of course, that's not always the case, but that is our aim. Artwis is saying, I've appeared in school solely for art itself study. What would you recommend I do for giving myself work? Would you recommend contacting my school's art teacher and having him critique my work? Absolutely. I mean, I think if you have an art teacher who you know, who you've worked with, you can speak to them in person, definitely. Because I can say as a professor, I cannot believe how passive sometimes students are about seeking out help, because I know for sure as a teacher, my role in the classroom is to give students content that they need and to help them as much as I can. But the thing is, you have to remember that we can't read minds, and I really wish I could, because wow, it'd be so much easier to be a teacher. But if you come to your teacher and say, here are the things I need, how can you help me? That's so helpful as a teacher. Like, I love it when students say that, because it's like, it just makes my job so much easier. Otherwise, it's like a total guessing game. Artwis is saying, would an online course be better for art school portfolios? Artwis, I think that depends on your teacher, because high school art teachers have a very broad range of experience. Some of them have very little experience helping students prepare portfolios. Others have a lot. But I will say, if you guys are looking for a free online resource, we do have a tutorial on preparing an art school portfolio, and I keep updating it. Like, the more ideas I come up with, I keep adding to it, because this actually started out as a blog post on my blog many, many years ago. But since then, we've added tons and tons of content. Like, one topic that I've gotten a lot of questions about is people will comment on the portfolio critiques, oh, well, how can you tell that something is done from a photo? And so in this course, I explicitly explain how, and I talk about smart ways to use a photo as a reference and ways that maybe are not as creative that you want to avoid. Artwis is saying, the teacher in my school is an art major teacher here in a local college. Well, good. I would definitely talk to them, but I would also say, don't limit yourself to that one person, because I think what's really good is to get a really wide range of comments. And in fact, I think it's good when you get people that don't share the same point of view, because then you can really say, okay, well, why did this person say that? Why did they disagree? What are the reasons? It really starts to get you to break down exactly what they're trying to say. And by the way, those of you guys who are looking for feedback, we do have live critiques here on YouTube. These are free. We don't charge a dime for these. You can submit 1 to 3 artworks, and you can see I just did one this morning, so go back and take a look at those. But again, we also have the portfolio critiques, which for some people is better because it's your whole portfolio. It's not just 1 or 3 pieces, but we do charge a fee. Itziar saying, I did an illustrated children's book I wanted to include, decided I should take 4 of its best illustrations, upload them separately into Slide Room. Do you think this is the way to go? Should I include these illustrations in a single page, as they all belong to a single project? Itziar, I think much better to have the 4 illustrations on separate slides, because we actually did a portfolio critique. It's pretty recent. It's done by Kat Huang, and the artist is Luna Wan, and it's on our YouTube. You guys can find it. It's the most recent portfolio critique. One of the problems with her portfolio was actually the arrangement of her slides. So she had a lot of slides that had like 12 images on each slide, and it was really problematic because there was too much to look at on that one slide. It really diluted the impact of that work. I mean, I would say you can even do 3 slides. I think 4 might be a little bit too much. I mean, I don't know what the images look like, if they're super complex or simple, but I think if you're showing a big project like that, yes, just pick like your 3 best pages and show those. Because in my opinion, but again, it depends on the work, I would not really put more than 2 or 3 images on a page, and I would only do that if the images were related, like a series, like a children's book, as Itziar is saying. Cross Luca is saying, I appreciate the hard work the rest of the crew put into this channel. Well, thank you very much. I mean, artprof.org, this is a total labor of love, because I feel like so much of the world is so like money driven, and I feel lucky that we're in a place where we can put this stuff out there, but it's challenging. I mean, it's a ton of work. I mean, it makes me laugh when people are like, yeah, I want to do a YouTube. I'm like, have you looked into how much work it is to actually run one that's not falling apart? ArtWis is saying, if you have a strong art portfolio but not the best average, let's say 85, do the art colleges look at grades or art more? ArtWis, definitely the portfolio is the core of your application. That's the most important thing. But I can tell you that a lot of the top art schools now, grades are becoming more important than they used to be. I had a friend I went to art school with. I mean, this is a long time ago, guys. This is like in the 90s. Things are different now. And this friend of mine almost flunked out of high school. I mean, their grades were bad and they still got into the school. I don't think that's going to happen today. I think today you need to have pretty good grades. I mean, I don't know what your portfolio looks like, so I can't really comment on that. But guys, just don't fail, okay? Like, you probably want to get like at least a B average. I don't think C's are great. But yes, that is part of the application process. So don't tell yourself, oh, if I have a great portfolio, I can just fail out all my classes. No problem. No, that is a problem. So you want to make sure that you guys do a really good job of doing that. I mean, I think the whole thing about the portfolio, you guys, you just really got to spend time on it. And I don't mean work hard for 2 months. I mean, get started early. I mean, to me, it's September now. A lot of the deadlines are in February. So what's that? September, October, November, December, January. That's pretty good. For those of you guys who are doing regular admission, that's 5 months. So if you guys start now and you're doing it on an ongoing basis, not as like a once in a while thing, that's pretty good. ArtWis is saying, how many pieces would you recommend to have in a portfolio? I mean, you have to look at what each individual school requires. Lots of schools will say, okay, minimum 12 pieces, maximum of 20. I think what I would consider, though, is not just the individual pieces, but how the individual pieces look together as a group. So, for example, if you have a portfolio with 15 pieces, okay, and let's say the minimum requirement is 12, okay? Let's say you have 12 pieces that are really stellar, and then you got 2 that aren't great, and you got 1 that's bad. I think it's better to put in the minimum number of pieces with all really strong pieces than to include some extra pieces for the sake of numbers that are not as high quality. Because when I look at portfolios and I see that the vast majority of the portfolio is really good, and then I see like 2 pieces that are just really subpar, it really makes me think less of the student, because I say, look, this person's fantastic most of the time, but once in a while they drop the ball. That's not good. You want consistency in your portfolio. Daria is asking, how do I learn to loosen up when I paint and draw versus being really tight? Okay, well, Daria, do you draw from photographs, paint from photographs, or do you paint and draw from life? Because I have noticed that when people draw from photographs, the more common tendency is for people to get really, really tight and want to draw every single little tiny detail. When you draw from life, your reference is not as stable. And so you cannot do that level of detail, and then it forces you to loosen up. Another good thing is to do lots of gesture drawings, like quick sketches of your friends eating at lunch. Julie Sharp, who was an intern at Art Prof, she used to sit and draw her friends at lunch. She had these fabulous portraits. You guys should actually check out some of those life drawings that Julie did. If you guys go to artprof.org and you go to tutorials, we do have this page where people talk about their sketchbooks, and you can look at how Julie recommends different ways to draw from life. So that would be a really good way to learn how to loosen up. Matthew Guy's saying, you're going to max out on the number of pieces allowed for one school and slide room. Would you say it's better to combine figure drawings into one submission, or simply get rid of the worst ones? I mean, it sort of depends on exactly how many you have, but I feel like if you have, let's say, 5 figure gesture drawings where it's obvious that the gesture drawings were like 2 or 5 minute drawings, I think what you could do is just pick like 2, maybe 3, put 3 of those on one slide, because those are related to each other. They're not just like random pieces. But I think just it's a situation where you just want consistent quality. Like if you really don't feel good about that work and you are referring to it as the worst ones, they probably shouldn't be in your portfolio. And so I think that you guys should think less about numbers, like, oh, I'm going to impress them by having the maximum number. I don't think that admissions officers look at it that way. I think that they look much more at the images. I don't think they're like, oh, wow, this person made 17, this person made 12. The person that made 17 is definitely better. That's not always the case. So the numbers are not what dictate the reaction to your work. Art worth saying, any tips for visualizing a concept and then putting it down on paper? Yes, I do. If you guys go to artprof.org, we do have this tutorial here, which is about linoleum printmaking, but the first 15 minutes or so demonstrates brainstorming techniques, ways to come up with different ideas, get reference images, make thumbnail sketches. So if you don't want to learn how to do the printmaking technique, you can just watch up until that point and just skip the rest of the tutorial. But I have a lot of good techniques like doing mind maps and making lists and crossing things out and just showing you how to transition from beginning to end, because one of my problems with a lot of tutorials online, they just show you a piece of the process. Like they'll show you the printing part, but then they won't show you the brainstorming. Or they'll show the brainstorming, but then they don't show you how to follow through. And so that is one thing I like about our tutorials, is that we do give the full experience of creating a piece from beginning to end. Cross to Lucas saying, who are some living artists that you follow or recommend? Okay, that's a really good question. I think it's very hard for a lot of students to know where to look for contemporary art. In fact, I am teaching a senior seminar class right now that is really a professional development class. So it's for seniors in art school and teaching them techniques and things that they need to know for when they get out of school. And I asked all of them, I said, where do you guys go to look for contemporary art? And they said to me, oh, I just look at Instagram. Okay, trust me, Instagram is fine, but if I were you guys, I'll put it into the chat box. There's a really good series on PBS, and it is called Art 21. I'm going to put the link in here into the chat box so that way you guys have them for contemporary artists. And this is a really good series, you guys. The videos are interviews and documentaries with like the top contemporary artists working today, and they're really well filmed. They pick really good artists, and it's a very broad range. It's like video artists and sculptors and people that draw, printmakers, everything. So that, I think, is one of the best places to look for contemporary art. Another place I look at is Hyperallergic. And actually, you know what I should show you guys is if you guys go to professional development on artprof.org, we do have a listing that shows different artists and websites that you can look at. I'll put that in the video description later, but you can take a look at that, and that's another good place to find things. Like, for example, I would say Artsy magazine, and I'm going to put this into the chat box. Hyperallergic is also excellent for finding artists. I mean, my problem with finding artists online right now is I feel like there's a lot of like really internet-y work where people are like, oh, I saved my fingernails for 10 years and now I made a sweater out of it. And I just feel like it's just really, I don't know, clickbait, and it really bothers me. So I feel like Art 21 on PBS, great. Daria saying, if you have a really large piece you want to bring to National Portfolio Day, would it be a bad idea to bring a smaller, more manageable print of the art? I mean, I think with National Portfolio Day, if you have work that is within reason, like I would say 22 inches by 30 inches, I think that's fine. Definitely bring the physical artwork, because I know as somebody who's reviewed work, it is such a big difference to see the work in person as opposed to online. Now, that said, though, definitely you're going to have pieces where it's just not convenient to bring the work because of size or whatever. And in that case, I really recommend having a laptop or an iPad or tablet where you have the images uploaded and you can just tap on the images. The one thing I will say, though, you guys, if you decide to do the tablet route, make sure you have it all organized in advance and that it's like 2 taps to get to your portfolio, because I have definitely been to events like this where people will show up with the iPad and they're like, oh, I have this stuff. Can I show you? And then they have all these technical problems and they're like, oh, wait a second, why doesn't that play? So like just troubleshoot it, because if you don't do that, I mean, that is like the fastest way to really irritate one of the admissions people. So don't do that. Oh, actually, I did find the listing. Okay, so listing of art publications online on artprof.org. I'm going to put that into the chat box, and hopefully that is a place that will help you guys look for contemporary artists. ArtWist is saying, I'm a person that tends to draw small, usually no bigger than 9 by 12. How important is size in a portfolio? I mean, I think in a portfolio, there's no size requirement. I mean, if there were, they probably would say so. But I do think as an artist, if you limit the size of artwork that you make, you're not going to be pushing yourself as much. I don't have problems working small. I mean, I know people who make beautiful, exquisite, small artwork. But the thing is, if you never have the experience of working on a bigger scale, I think it really limits your capacity to explore new things. Because, for example, when I used to teach freshman drawing, I would make them do a 3-foot by 4-foot drawing every single week. And for a lot of those freshmen, that was terrifying because most of them had never drawn anything bigger than like 18 by 24. And a lot of them complained about it night and day. And so I asked them at the end of the semester, guys, why do you think I make you do that? And what if I said to you guys, make a 22 by 30 inch drawing? What would you say? They go, oh, piece of cake. I'm like, that's why. Because once you have the experience of working large, nothing intimidates you. And it really empowers you to do many, many more things. Minimum size of a portfolio piece. I don't think there is a minimum size. I mean, I think you can make tiny artwork and make it incredible, but you have to think about ways to do that. You got to be innovative. Daria saying, portfolio on iPad is really good for a portfolio. It's really easy and fast to use, and it works without Wi-Fi. Yes, don't rely on the Wi-Fi, you guys. Make sure that the images are actually in your tablet. I do that because I lecture a lot, and while I do sometimes upload my slideshows to, say, Google Slides, I am so paranoid about the Wi-Fi not working that I always just have a manual version of it in my laptop. You just never want to rely on that because I don't know how many of you guys have been to National Portfolio Day, but it can be very stressful. And if you guys want to hear about it, by the way, if you go to our, pointing this way, this page, How to Prepare an Art Portfolio for Art School Admission, me and Casey and Lauren and Alex, we tell all of our horror stories. I have a really good horror story that happened to me in the 90s. You guys will love it. Go watch it. It's pretty funny. There's one section on the tab that says National Portfolio Day. You guys will definitely find it there. It's actually, I think Casey has the best National Portfolio Day story. When I heard it, I just was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, Casey, that you had to do that. So go and check that out when you can. Amaris is saying, can we use the sketchbook video you made to create a portfolio, for example, scan and print artwork? I think I don't quite understand your question. Are you saying, yeah, Amaris, can you describe that again? I'm just asking whether you're trying to follow a similar format or whether you want to show the video. I'm a little bit confused. So see if you can rephrase that question. ArtWist is saying, would you recommend including any sketchbook spreads in a portfolio? If so, how many? Yes, I definitely would. Because what's really helpful about showing your sketchbook page is it's providing visual insight on your artistic process. Because one concern that I have for a lot of students is I think, unfortunately, in high school, sometimes there is far too much emphasis on people's technical ability. And I know when I was in high school, and I think this is still prevalent in high schools today, is the high school art becomes a competition of who can draw the most photorealistically. And that is not what art school portfolios want. They want to see that you're thinking about ideas, that you're processing things. And so having a sketchbook spread that shows your thought process, your research, your ideas, the development of your sketch is really, really important. I would say no more than 2 sketchbook spread slides. I think that's totally sufficient. You can only just have 1. That's fine, but I wouldn't do more than 2. Amaris is saying, like, scan and print artwork and bind it like your sketchbook video into a book. Oh, I understand. I wouldn't do that, Amaris. I think that unless you really know how to actually bind a sketchbook and make it look really, really good, that's probably not a good idea because bookbinding can be challenging. Although, if you guys really want to learn to do it, we do have actually a tutorial on bookbinding. Let me see if I can find that. Here we go. Get rid of that. Oh no, that's how to use a sketchbook. Sorry, let me see if I can pull this up. Why is that not popping up? Okay, here we go. Give me 1 second. Oh, that's strange that that's not showing up. Okay, anyway, I'll try to track that down later on. But I just think that an iPad is much better. An iPad is way cleaner. The presentation is faster, it's more efficient. I just don't think that that's a great idea. I think that'd be much better just to show the works as they are. I mean, if you have an artist book, absolutely go ahead and do something like that. But I don't think that binding it as a presentation thing is a good thing because it actually can become a really big distraction for a lot of people. Like a lot of people just end up looking at that and then it really becomes a problem because then they're thinking about, oh, well, what does that presentation look like? You don't really want to do that. Amaris is saying, I've bound a lot of sketchbooks for friends as practices, so it should be easy for me to do. I mean, you can do it. I'm not saying that you should not. I don't know what your binding skills are like. I just think that, in my opinion, I see a lot of artists, they try to make their presentation very fancy, and I think most of the time when I've seen people do that, it ends up really backfiring. Like, I was reviewing somebody's artist website once, and I said to them, why do you have this like super fancy font? And they said, oh, well, I really wanted to show how creative I was. And I said to them, look, graphic design is not where you need to get creative if you're not a graphic designer. Where you want to show off your creativity is in the actual artwork. It's not in the format. So Amaris, of course, it's your call. You can do whatever you want. I have very well been wrong in many different situations, but my first instinct is to not do that. I think that showing the actual artworks would be a lot better because then you have to think about, okay, well, then I have to have a really good scan. Then you have to print the artwork out. And then what kind of paper do you use? I just think that what you're describing, what I'm understanding from what you're saying, it sounds like it's more likely to not work out well than to work out well. There are exceptions, but I think that's what I have definitely seen in a lot of different situations. By the way, we also have these Skype calls that you guys can purchase as well. And the Skype calls are really nice because you get to speak to one of our staff one-on-one for 30 minutes, for 60 minutes. And it's nice because it's like instantaneous results and you can ask whatever you want and really get custom tailored advice. So any of you guys are interested, you can go to this page on artprof.org and you guys can purchase one of those. Artwist is saying, in terms of getting into an art school, which aspect do they look at more? Technical skill of the artist or the potential? I think both. I think that what I hear a lot from students is, oh, well, what matters more, my technique or my thinking? And the answer is both, because if you have really lousy skills and great ideas, that's not good. And if you have wonderful ideas but no means to execute it, that's not good either. So, of course, there is nobody out there who is like, oh my God, 100% perfect in every single area. I don't think that's the case for any of us, actually. So I think that's unrealistic. But I guess what I'm trying to tell you guys is that you have to look at your artistic skills in a cohesive way. You have to say, okay, well, I need to have skills in color. I need to have skills in black and white. I have to address 3D concerns. I have to think about composition. I mean, I tell my students in my classes, guys, make a checklist. Like when you're doing a drawing, say composition, lighting, value, contrast, texture, balance. Think about all those things. Don't just do one thing at a time. Itziar saying, how long should an artwork description in slide room be ideally? I would keep it pretty short. I think you have to make the assumption that if you are an admissions officer, you're probably looking at just hundreds of portfolios. So you can imagine if you have a portfolio with 20 pieces and each artwork has a 3-paragraph description, they're not going to read it. There's just no chance. Nobody has that kind of time to be doing that. So I think if I were you guys, I would recommend a description that's 3, maybe 4 sentences long, and just make sure it's really clear and succinct. You can ask somebody else to read it and make sure that it comes across clearly, because I think statements are so problematic for artists. I mean, if we were good writers, we would be writers. We wouldn't be artists. So I always find the writing part of it to be somewhat silly in a way. I mean, I think it's important ultimately. I'm just saying, as visual people, it's sometimes silly, I think, to expect us to be just as good at writing, because most of us, including myself, are not. But I do think that you need to have somebody look at it, because so many artist statements I read, they're very ambiguous, they get really rambly, and so it does not hurt to have somebody read through those descriptions. Mika is saying, will this live stream by any chance be re-uploaded? Just tuned in, appreciate all your advice. Yes. So after I finish up the stream, it takes like a half an hour for the video to process, but it will show up later and you can rewatch the whole thing later on. Also, I believe we've done 3 other Q&A live streams so far. So I've done 2 prior to today. Jordan just did one. And actually, if you guys want to go to our events page on our main site, I will put that into the chat box right now. We do have several art school portfolio Q&As coming up. We're trying to schedule like 4 or 5 a month, so that way you guys have ongoing feedback. So I'm going to write that here. Art school portfolios live Q&A schedule. Whoops, here we go. Q&A schedule. Here we go, is here. So if you guys just click on that link, you can see that. And we also have the schedule for live critiques. So if you guys want to see that, that I think is very helpful. I've had a lot of people say that they find going to the live critiques is very helpful, because they get advice that they can apply to their own artwork. I think sometimes people think that a critique is only useful if it's their artwork being critiqued, but I actually think when you watch somebody else being critiqued, it's almost easier because you're separate from the experience. I know for me, I'm so close to my artwork that sometimes it's hard for me to take in the critique. If I watch somebody else, I can look at it much more objectively. And we have a live critique almost every day. So please check it out. And if you guys didn't know, our live critiques are free. So if you guys want to submit your own artwork, you can submit 1 to 3 pieces. Just go to the video description below. We have the links down there. I mean, that's sort of nice because then you don't have to submit the whole portfolio. You just submit a couple pieces. And guys, I would do it now. I would not wait until like January to do this. You want to get the feedback early. Cross DeLuca is saying, you have any advice for scheduling art into your day and making work regularly? I work a full-time job and is always tired. Yes. Okay. I think what's very helpful is, if you can, wherever you live, have a space that's specifically for making art. And it does not have to be big or elaborate. It could be a tiny little table that just has a sketchbook on it and a couple of colored pencils. And what I do is I just have the sketchbook open. And so that it's just a matter of me just seeing that open sketchbook. Then I just pick up the pencil and I just draw. So that's very helpful, because I think for some people, if they have to think, oh, where's my sketchbook? Oh, it's in my bag. Oh, where's my bag? It becomes like too much work to have to do that. So if you have a place and it's always there, you just pick it up. That's definitely the best way to do it. Another thing that I do is when I leave the studio for the day, I never finish a piece and then leave. I always have a piece that's in progress and then I leave, because then when I come back the next day, it's so much easier to just jump back into the artwork. Because when you finish something and you leave, when you come back, starting is very hard. Starting is the hardest part, you guys. Like once I'm working, it's like totally cool. I can do it all, but the starting is very hard. And so I think it's about setting up these places that invite you to work. Some people have triggers. Like I have a certain playlist that I listen to. In fact, you guys can listen to my playlist. It's on my bio page. If you guys want to check that out, you can listen to all the silly music that I listen to, and you can hear especially how totally out of date it is, because apparently when you're an adult, you can't absorb music beyond the music you listened to in high school. So here, I'll put that into the chat box. My Spotify playlist is here. And so what I do is I just have that one playlist, and I'm like, oh, when I hear that playlist, it is time to work. It's like a trigger for me in a lot of ways. ITCR is saying, if I purchase a Skype call review, do you guys check descriptions, materials, and dimensions? Absolutely. So if you guys, for example, purchase a Skype call, or if you purchase a portfolio critique, we spend a lot of time reviewing this stuff in advance. We don't just jump on the call and start talking to you. So if you guys go to the website and you look, we have a submission form for when you purchase a Skype call, and we'll ask you to write a statement about yourself. If you have questions you want to ask us in advance, we'll want to see some of your artwork. You send us basically anything you want us to know about, and we spend a lot of time really getting acquainted with you as an artist, reviewing all that. Sometimes if we have questions, we'll ask you in advance. So the Skype calls, we don't go into it totally cold, because we've just found that when we have that initial premise of who somebody is, what they're doing, the Skype call is so much better for everybody involved. So we definitely do all that prep work. We will read anything that you want us to take a look at, definitely for sure. And we do the same thing with a portfolio critique, that we will have a statement. I mean, those statements we ask you guys to write, they're so helpful. We find it actually really difficult to do a portfolio review when people write very little on their statement, because it's harder for us to figure out what they're thinking. So the more you guys tell us, basically, the better. Aiden is saying, would you recommend including in-class artworks in addition to personal projects? What should the balance be? Good question. I think definitely do both. I think you probably want to include the class exercises that you're excited about, because trust me, guys, I can definitely spot from a mile away the still life you had to do in art class that you were bored out of your mind doing. So if you have a still life drawing like that, where you're just like, oh, so bored and not excited, don't put that in. Only put in a class project if it's one you're sincerely excited about, because you can spot boredom a mile away. And also, those still lives, they can sometimes end up looking really generic, and that's not good either. You still want them to show your personal voice. If you guys want tips on how to set up a still life that is not boring and horrible for people to look at, you might want to check out our oil painting tutorial, because I set up the coolest still life, and I sort of paid for it later because I had this giant jackfruit that rotted. It was not pretty. So if you want to see how that happened, that's cool. I also painted a lobster, which was so fun. So still life does not have to be boring. I know a lot of people think it is. People think, oh, it's just a peach with a vase. It can be that. It can be boring. Or you can be awesome and paint a lobster, because, man, that was like really fun. So I don't think, Aiden, that there's a particular balance. Like, I don't think it's 50-50. If I were to pick between projects and class projects, which one to be more dominant, I would say the personal projects. So you could, for example, say do like 70% personal projects and 30% class projects, but hard for me to give a really specific, concrete answer without seeing the artwork. And ultimately, I have to see the portfolio to really give you guys specific advice. That's what's challenging about giving advice about art school portfolios, is that every single artist and portfolio out there is so different. And it's like, I can give you guys basic advice, but it's like that advice only goes so far, because so much of it is contingent upon the other parts of your portfolio. Mika is saying, how do you create connections with industry professionals? Going to a mixer event for animation, I've never been to one before. Okay, that's a great question, Mika. I think what I really recommend is that if you can foster a connection with somebody before you meet them in person, that's a huge difference. So I'm not saying you have to. You can certainly just show up and do that, but you have to do a bunch of things. So if you know about this person in advance, you should interact with them on social media. Make comments. Don't just like, okay? Liking is fine, but if you're an artist online and you get a lot of likes, you don't pay attention to them. Like on Instagram, I don't look at who's liking my posts, but I do read comments. So somebody writes a comment that is more than, hey, cool, that's a little bit more involved, I will tend to pay attention. And the people that do that more often tend to pique my interest a lot more. So you can do that. And then when you meet them in person, you actually have something to say. And I think it really helps to show that you know who they are. Because I had a couple of seniors say to me, they were like, oh, well, I was really having a hard time applying for internships. And I said, look, did you do research on the companies? Did you find out what kind of work they're doing? Because so many people, they just like send out all these resumes and they don't do any research, and they end up applying to places that really are not good fits. Because the thing about jobs, and I think colleges too, it's like dating. It's like one company is not necessarily the best company for everybody. It's like the best company for that person. And it's the same thing with college. Harvard is not the best school for everybody. Harvard would have been terrible for me. I would have been miserable there. It's great for some people, but not for everybody. So you can do that. If you meet somebody in person first and you never knew anything about them, I think it helps to just strike up a conversation for sure. And then you can say something to them at some point, like, oh, hey, are you on Instagram or are you on Facebook or whatever? And then they'll say yes or no. And then maybe like a week later after the event, send them a message on email or maybe comment on their Instagram and say, hey, it was so cool to meet you at that mixer. So I think the important thing, you guys, with industry professionals, you got to follow up. Like if you shake someone's hand once, they're not going to remember. You have to build a relationship. And yes, it's so much more work, but that's what it takes. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to make that happen. Emma is saying, I'm in G11, never really took any art classes. I have trouble starting big pieces of artwork. Do you have any suggestions on what I can do to work my way up to one? Okay, I think, Emma, working big is a challenge for obvious reasons, but there are some materials that are much better for working bigger than for others. Like, for example, we have this wonderful tutorial on rapidograph pen drawing and ink wash drawing, which is great. However, I would not choose a rapidograph pen if I wanted to make a large scale piece because it just does not make sense at all. You would just drive yourself up the wall. However, charcoal drawing is terrific for working on a big scale, because if you have like a big hunk of vine charcoal, you can like cover the space really well. You can get the tones down. I think that you just have to be smart about the material that you use, because if you start with really small picky things, it can be very, very difficult. And I really would recommend, Emma, doing small scale sketches. So you're not just like diving into a big piece with no preparation whatsoever. I think that that can be a real problem. If you guys look at this gouache painting tutorial, you will see in the tutorial that Alex Rowe, who's leading the tutorial, he does tons of thumbnail sketches. He shoots his own reference photos. He even does color sketches. So I think a big part about overcoming working on a big scale is being prepared, like not going in totally blind, because then it's like you have somewhat of a guideline of what you want to do. And I think that really helps people a lot. Another tutorial that actually I think, well, it's not a tutorial, it's actually a discussion. It's about how to draw faster. Let me pull that up right now. Oh, sorry, I've got this on top of something else. Oh, this is not, I've got a couple of these that are not popping up for one reason or another. Okay, what I'll do instead is I'll stick it into the video description below, but we do have this discussion about how to draw faster. And I think that that does really help in terms of working big, because if you work big, you can't draw slow. It's just not gonna happen. So tips for how to draw faster. That is a discussion between me and a couple artists, and we give lots of examples from our personal experience. Mika saying, thank you so much for the advice. Appreciate it. Oh, happy to help, because you know something, you guys, you cannot be an artist by yourself. You need to get help from other people. And I think so many people don't want to say that because, I don't know, people don't want to admit that you need help, which seems ridiculous because everybody needs help. And you guys will find, if you do go to art school, you do become a professional artist, that those connections and relationships that you have with other artists and your colleagues are so important. I'm not even just talking in terms of advancing your career. I'm talking about like not going nuts. Like I have a whole bunch of artist colleagues who I'll see every now and then, and I feel so much better after I talk to them, because this whole artist thing, and you guys can give me your point of view as well, it's like you get it or you don't. Like, don't you guys know people who just don't get it at all? And it's like you try to explain to them like what being an artist is all about, and it's like you just like, you know, it's in one ear out the other. And then there's the people, like, you talk to them about being an artist and it's like they just get it. It's like, I don't know, it's like we have some other language of our own, and it's like you either have that language or you don't. And so you have to seek out those other people, which is what's so cool about these live streams. Is I just love hearing all these voices. Like, it's so wonderful for me to hear what you guys are dealing with, because things are so different now than when I grew up, because I'm a million years old now. So anyway, things are just not the same as they were in the 1990s. So anyway, but I think that what I recommend to you guys is so much, I think, of being an artist, it's in your head. Like, so many people think, oh, well, drawing is just about what my hand can do. Oh, if I have really good motor coordination, I'm going to be better at drawing. Or, oh, I've got a really strong arm, I'm going to be really good at painting. And I don't think that's the case at all. I think that so much of it is how you think about it. I had a student once many years ago, they asked me, what mindset do I need to have to be successful in drawing? And it sounds really corny, but when I go to the studio, I have to be in like a kick-ass frame of mind. If I don't have that frame of mind, I am doomed to fail. And I think that that's important to recognize, because anytime I have really fallen on my face or done very well, it's always a result of a shift in mindset. Because sometimes what happens is you can really shoot yourself in the foot. Like, I will go to the studio and I will put lots of pressure on myself, which, by the way, I don't recommend, where I'll be like, okay, today's the day, you're gonna make progress, you're gonna do great work, you're gonna do this today. You haven't been in the studio for a while, let's do this. And I don't know why I do that, because I always end up really mad and very frustrated because things aren't coming out the way I want them to. Because when you set expectations like that for you as an artist, it's like you're setting yourself up to fail. And so this is what always happens, okay? Then I get mad, like really mad at myself. And I'm like, oh, it's all my fault. I set myself up to do this. And then, well, I use some words that I'm not going to use here, but I'm just like, screw this, whatever. And I just get really mad and I'm like, who cares? And then I just start making stuff. It's this whirlwind of activity. I stop thinking about things and then I step back and I go, hey, that's pretty good. So a lot of being an artist, you have to have an awareness, but you also have to know how to turn your brain off. Because I think so many of us distract ourselves too much with so many things. And so one of the things that I've recommended to a lot of my students is I say, look, you can create a studio routine for yourself in which you are focused on the work, but not so focused that you're bothering yourself, that you're judging yourself in the process. Because I never critique my work when I'm working on it. I'm always wrong. I have this thing, I call it the 2-week rule. So I'll work on a drawing and I'll think, oh, this sucks, I hate this. But I don't judge it. I take the drawing and I put it somewhere else, in a folder, in a portfolio where I can't see it. I take it out 2 weeks later, and sometimes I go, you know what, that wasn't so bad. Other times, oh yes, mistake, which is fine. It's just that I don't think it's a good idea, you guys, when you're working, to try to judge or critique what you're doing as you're doing it. Like, you really have to have that distance from it. So make the artwork step away. Don't critique it immediately, because you're only going to end up driving yourself a little bit up the wall. So keep that in mind. And I say to students, look, you guys, for me, I listen to podcasts. There's this NPR podcast, it's called How I Built This. And I really like that podcast because it talks about people who started a company from scratch and what they had to do to create their company and get things going. And I love it because I listen to that podcast. I'm like, oh man, this is my life with Art Prof. This is so similar in terms of what I'm trying to do. So I find it inspirational, but it's also nice because it distracts me just enough that I don't obsess over my progress as an artist, but it's not so distracting that I can't focus. Like, if I was trying to watch, I could not watch a movie at the same time. That would be too much. And so I try to listen to something that's somewhat distracting, but not too much. Emma saying, don't have access to live figure drawing. Drawings from images online from art websites, a good way to improve. Emma, I don't recommend that. I mean, a lot of people do that, but I personally don't think it's a good idea. Here's why. Because it's very, very flat. It's really small. And I think you guys are much better off getting your sketchbook and hanging out with your friends. Like maybe they're watching a movie, maybe they're eating or something like that. And sketch them in your sketchbook. People don't have to be nude for you to draw from life. I mean, yes, it's great if you can, but not everybody has access to that. And if you guys actually, if you go to my Instagram, I have a lot of life drawings of people just sitting around. Let me, I'll put my Instagram into the chat box. So life drawings done of people wearing clothes on my Instagram. And I think you guys will find that that is much more valuable because you're going to be training your eye to really look. Because it's almost like if you train from those images online, like that's one skill. And then when you really do draw from a model in real life, it's like you got to learn a whole other skill. So I personally don't think it's a great idea. I would much rather draw my kids at breakfast, which I've done. I mean, you guys can probably look at it and find it if you scroll back on my Instagram. I do lots of life drawings of my kids, or just like when I was in Vancouver, I drew people that were in the hotel sitting next to me having breakfast. So people don't have to be nude. You can save that for college when you have a real model and you can learn it in a way that's really going to help you. I just feel like it's, I don't know, like a really quick way to, it's almost like you're getting the Cliff Notes version. I don't know if you guys know what that is. Cliff Notes, long time ago, it was like your cheat sheet. So if you like didn't want to actually read Shakespeare, you would just read the Cliff Notes. It would just give you the summary. I'm sure there's an online version of that now, but in the 90s we had that. And it's like you think about what's the difference between reading an online summary of Romeo and Juliet versus reading Romeo and Juliet. It's two very different experiences. And so that's how I would characterize that. Animation is saying, what should I do if I don't know what to create, but I also feel pressured to keep going because portfolio deadlines are approaching at the same time? Okay, I would recommend Animation 195. If you guys don't have ideas for projects, I would definitely take a look at some of the past art dares that we've done. Every single month, we have a monthly art dare. And of course, I'd love for you guys to do that. But we've been doing the art dares for like 3 years now. So we have like, what's 3 times 12? 36. We have like 36 art dares there. And you can use those to give yourself ideas. So let me just write this here. Monthly art dares, good for project ideas. So I'll put that in. And also, if you guys go to our tutorials page, we have video tutorials, but we also have project ideas, like literally lesson plans for projects. So I'm going to write in here, project ideas and video tutorials are here. And these are basically just a series of all different types of prompts for you to start with, because I think for a lot of students, it's just really hard to know where to start. Like, oh my God, I need an idea. But let me just give you guys an example. Let me see if I can pull one up here. Like, for example, here is a project idea that I actually did. Oh, why are some of these not showing up? I don't know why that's happening. Okay, let me see if I can. Oh, here we go. Okay, so this is a project idea that I do a lot with my summer classes, where you go to the New York Times or any newspaper and you pick an obituary of somebody and you create a self-portrait, I mean, not a self-portrait, a portrait of the person in the obituary using mixed media collage. So you might say, oh, well, I don't want to do the mixed media collage part, but oh, that's really cool to do a portrait of somebody who recently died, because then you can read a little bit about that person. Oftentimes you learn about somebody you didn't know about before. So check that out, because that will give you guys tons of ideas. Like, our site is just overflowing with project lessons. So definitely check that out when you guys get a chance. Jacob Gong is saying, I'm interested in the horror genre. Should I include some scary pieces? Yes, do it. I mean, I think you guys, most things are fair game. As long as you're not making work that's like hateful, that's racist, that's offensive. That's what you want to avoid. But I think scary is totally fine. By the way, Jacob, have you seen Junji Ito? I'm going to put Junji Ito's name in the chat box. Junji Ito, horror manga artist. My daughter is obsessed with his comics, and it was very funny because she was like, oh, we're allowed to bring graphic novels to school. I'm going to bring Junji. I'm like, you're not bringing Junji Ito. I am going to be called to the principal's office if you do that. But anyway, he's really amazing. I would definitely look at his work. Let's see. Mika's saying, I get what you say about burning out. I got to step away for a few days. But for me, I think having a different hobby than just drawing helps. Yeah, writing is so helpful, Mika. I mean, what I usually do is I write in my sketchbook. I find that so helpful because then I feel like I'm still contributing to my artistic practice. But it is, like you said, a change of pace. Kiara saying, do you think that letters of rec help at all in art portfolios? Yes. I mean, I don't think that they would ask for them if they didn't matter at all. But I think it would be really good if you can to get a letter from somebody who really knows you as an artist. I mean, if you don't have lots of people like that, obviously you can get it from your history teacher or whatever. But if you have an art teacher at your high school, I would get one from them. If you went to a summer program, you can get one from them. I think it is better to get it from an art teacher. But I mean, if you don't have anybody that really knows you that well, or you didn't get along with your art teacher, obviously somebody else is totally fine. Mika said, figure drawing teacher thinks the same in terms of real life for figure drawing versus photos. He said that it also has to do with us having two eyes, whereas the camera is just one. Yeah, I think, Mika, for me, it's just that seeing something that's already 2D and making it 2D, you don't have to work very hard. But if you have something that's 3D in front of you, and then you have to turn it into 2D, there's a real transformation that has to happen there that you have to be responsible for. And I'm not saying you shouldn't work from photos, because I think that working from photos can be very, very helpful. Like, for example, this gouache tutorial that I was showing you guys earlier, we do take reference photos. We shoot our own, which is so much better. By the way, you guys, if you need a picture of something, if you can, take it yourself. Don't find a picture online. Like, so many students are like, oh, well, I want to do a picture of a hand in this position. What do? I can't find it. I'm like, take your camera and take a photo. I mean, I had somebody who wanted to do a drawing of an apple, and they Googled apple. I'm like, get an apple from the grocery store. I mean, obviously, if you want to draw a flamingo, you can't do that. But there's a lot of things that you guys can shoot on your own. And by the way, if you want to see on artprof.org, we do have a demonstration in this tutorial on digital illustration on how to shoot reference photos, because it sounds easy, but it's not. There's actually lots of tips and tricks. And Kat Huang, who demonstrates this, she's so good at it. Like, she's got this whole strategy and plan for how to shoot reference photos. And so check that out. She's really, really good at that. Yeah, Junji Ito is amazing. Oh my God. Like, I'm not like super into manga or comics. Like, I don't know a whole lot about that genre. I have a lot of students that do, but when my daughter started reading Junji Ito, I was like, oh my God, this stuff is so intense. In fact, this is very funny. I actually have Shiver sitting here on my desk. Oh, and I have Smashed as well, because my daughter's been doing this. Well, sometimes like I'm working on my computer and she's like sitting next to me. So I have all these like Junji Ito books here. So anyway, he's really cool. But anyway, you guys, let me remind you that if you didn't already know, we do offer portfolio critiques on artprof.org for a fee. We will talk about your artwork for 30 minutes. And this is for BFA portfolios and MFA portfolios. Or if you're not even applying to art school, you just want us to look at your work, you can definitely do that as well. And we also offer Skype calls. You can choose anybody on our staff. This is Lauren. You can choose myself. And same thing with the portfolio critiques. You guys can pick whoever you want to chat with you. We want to help you guys. We know this is a complicated process. I think a lot of people don't really know how to navigate things, and we want to support you guys in that way. And also remember, if you want a free option, you can submit 1 to 3 artworks and get a free live critique here on our YouTube channel. And lastly, we really hope that you guys will consider supporting us, because you know what? We love working on Art Prof, but oh my goodness, it takes a lot of people and staff time and budget to make this function. We operate on the smallest budget. I mean, squeezing every little bit. And the more budget we have, you guys, the more we can give you. There's so many tutorials. People are like, we need this tutorial. I want linear perspective. I'm like, I want to give it to you guys, but we just don't have the budget. So if you guys can just give us $1 a month, if you can maybe just give us a one-time donation of $15. That goes a long way, you guys. So please consider that. You just go up here to the URL for our Patreon. We'd really appreciate it if you guys can do that. Thank you so much for tuning in. And remember, you guys can check out, we'll have many more of these live streams, and we hope to see you guys next time. Bye.